And I need to move. Hola, buenas noches. Hello, everybody who's joining us live tonight. And if you happen to be watching the replay, welcome to you as well. Um, if you saw the thumbnail for this video, it might look a little familiar. Like, wasn't this supposed to happen already?
Yes. Yes.
So, that tonight we're talking to Jalila, who was living in China and moved to Colombia. But first, before we jump into that and all of that fun stuff, let me introduce myself in case there is someone brand new watching and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I in for? Welcome. My name is Adelia Borishade. I am the founder of Picky Girls Travel Solo. It's a Facebook group for Black women, solo travelers with all levels of experience. I am also the creator of the Financial Confidence Academy, which is a space in which I help educate and empower Black women so that they can make financially confident decisions in order to live the life of their dreams, which is what I have been doing for the last 6 years on Saturday. 6 years ago, I left the
Yay.
US. Yep. And to be real, I ain't never looked back. So on this channel, we talk about what it is like to live abroad as a Black woman, to travel as a Black woman. And we talk about finances and we discuss those topics so that you too can live the life that you want. So if those are things that sound good to you, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. I go live typically once a week, and in theory, I upload maybe 2 videos a week also.
Okay.
But that's the typical thing you can expect. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome, welcome. Okay, so this is the interview that was delayed. So what was that? Like the beginning of June?
Uh, Probably because I think I was like, oh well, next month, like I'll be, on Western time again. Yeah.
Yes, we were trying to coordinate this with Jalila in Shanghai, China, and
Yeah.
me in Mexico City. And, there's time zones, there's the Great Firewall you got to deal
Yeah.
with. So, it wasn't the easiest thing for us to get together, but here
Yeah.
we are now.
Yeah.
Um, so much to talk to you about. So
Okay.
we're going to try and do this in an orderly fashion, but sometimes the conversation just goes where it goes. Okay.
Okay.
So I remember seeing you Facebook, maybe WeChat in 2019. Is that when you moved to, it was Beijing originally, wasn't it?
Yeah. Originally, yeah, I had moved to Beijing with Disney English, but then after COVID, they went under, so then I ended up like working at like a Chinese bilingual kindergarten. But yeah, that was September 6th, 2019. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I had arrived in China late February
Okay.
2019, 2018. No, 2019, 2019.
Okay.
Because I had come on like a 4 month contract. I was finishing out somebody's school year because I taught at a offshore Canadian school.
Mm-hmm.
So not a Chinese public school, but also not not a true international school.
Okay.
And they caught me on a good day and were like, hey, would you like to extend your contract? And I was like, this doesn't
Yeah.
suck. And said, yeah, and then ended up there an extra year. But before we delve into what it was like living in both Beijing and Shanghai for you, I want to find out a little bit about like what were you doing before you decided to take this job teaching English in China?
Yeah, so I had been a police officer for like 10 years in America. And I honestly didn't realize I was burnt out. But then like, one day I was just like, this just isn't for me anymore. And, it wasn't like, any of the things that anyone might think. It's just, honestly, after a few years, I felt like that. I mean, I had always regretted like not studying abroad. And so, like year after year after year, I'd go on vacation and it was just like 10 week or 10 days or 2 weeks and it just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And yeah, just eventually I was just like, yeah, I really need something else. And I thought like, okay, well, maybe it's just like the nature of the job. Like some people don't make it to 20 years. So I was like, well, maybe it's just the nature of the job. And yeah, I thought, okay, well, what else could I do? What else would I be interested in doing? And strangely enough, I went to a Women of Color podcasting event. And this was 2018. Yeah. And I thought, oh, well, maybe something with my voice. People have always said that I have a great voice or something like that. And so, yeah, I met this, great person named Janaea. She's actually my guest number 2 on my podcast. And she was like, "Oh yeah, definitely. Let's keep in touch." And I say this like on every interview practically. She was like, "But I'm moving to China in 12 days." And I was like, number one, China, why? And then number two, why are you leaving America? Like, I just didn't see that like I would be that comfortable anywhere else. Yeah, believe it or not, I didn't. But then
That's
lo and
really
behold,
interesting.
yeah, but then lo and behold, I've been living other places and been comfortable. So much so that like, I mean, it was so hard waking myself up from a nap to like get up from this for this interview. Um,
No, we are all about a life of ease on this channel and doing as
yeah,
little as possible. And we honor nap time around here, so
yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
feel bad.
Yeah, and yeah, and so she mentioned like things that like resonated with me. So she was like, "Oh, well, the cost of living will be pretty low compared to like the salary that she's gonna make. Because foreigners make far more obviously than the locals do. I don't know if that's obvious. I guess I say obvious a lot, but so like they do depending on the skill set and like teaching English is one of those things where you can make significantly more than like say like the average wage. But she said something that just struck a chord and it was travel. And I was like, okay, that's speaking to me. And I followed her for 6 months. We kept in touch for 6 months. So it was from October to April 2019. That's when I said, "Hey, okay, well, how do I do that? I don't know how to go abroad," which is so crazy because now it seems so simple. Like, duh.
The
Um,
world, that particular area has changed dramatically in the
yeah, yeah,
last 2, 3 years, and I think the pandemic played a big role in that. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't feel bad about that.
But it's like, I mean, I had like no clue. And it's crazy because like, I was just on this Facebook group. I think it was like brothers and sisters in Thailand. And someone was like, because I saw something that said something about like the African diaspora, and I was like, oh, number 7, Colombia. Oh, I'm in Colombia. Oh, that's me. Because I'm Afro Latino. Plus, I'm in like a place where there's lots of Afro Latinos as well. And so someone was like, oh, well, how do I get abroad? And I was like, oh, well, I created this list of like teach online opportunities so you can get abroad. It's free. I'm not an affiliate. I don't make any money. I'm just trying to be helpful because I know how it is. So anyway, so I didn't realize at the time, obviously I do now. And yeah, she sent me the list of like 3 training centers that she'd heard of. The one at the top was Disney English. And I was like, oh, Disney, I'm aware of what company that is. Ding, ding, ding. And yeah, I applied to them. And, months later, after I had completed all the things, tasks on their list, then there I was in Beijing saying, oh, ni hao. That's basically it. Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Now, okay, I didn't know this until I watched the interview you did with Shar Winter.
Yeah.
on her expat chat. When you said like you heard her about her going to China and you were kind of like, oh, well, why would I do something like that? But you're not originally from the US.
Correct. Yeah, 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 which is so crazy. Yeah. But it's just because it's like, okay, so like so when I was 3, we moved from Panama, Central America, to America. But it's just growing up there, it's like, I
Well,
feel American, you know what I mean? I
well,
sound
the
American.
system got you the same way it got
Yeah.
those of us who were born there. And I
Yeah.
find that really interesting because I think sometimes some of the conversations I see online and in
Mhm.
these like aspiring expat spaces,
Yeah.
sometimes folks feel like, oh, like I've been blinded by the system and I should have woken
Yeah.
up. But it's, you got it since you were 3.
Hmm.
Some of us got it since the minute we were born. Like, this is the
Yeah.
greatest country in the world. There is no
Yeah, yeah,
place
yeah,
that is
exactly.
going
Yeah.
to even come close. Don't even consider other places.
Yeah.
So I do find that interesting that
Yeah.
I mean, do you consider yourself an immigrant to the US?
Well, what's funny is that it's like, you know, mm, honestly, I really don't. I really
Okay.
don't. I mean, even though like technically I really am because I'm a naturalized citizen. So I became a citizen 5 years after we arrived there at the age of 8 because, at the time it took 5 years. I don't
And
know
now
what it
it
takes
takes
now.
forever. It
Yeah.
takes forever now.
Um yeah, and like I mean the food that I ate at home was definitely not, American unless my mom was being like probably like tired or lazy or something. Then she'd be like, "All right, well then I guess I'm gonna make some spaghetti or something." But the food that I grew up with is the typical Latin American food. So like I ate patacones, plátano maduro, arroz con pollo, like I mean all of that stuff. I mean the language that my mom spoke at home and she still speaks is Spanish, even though, yes, she's fluent in English. All my family is. But so, I mean, the place where I spent my summer vacations every single year of my life until I became an adult and started, university and then work was Panama, 3 months every single year. So like a quarter of the year, was spent, in my homeland. So yeah, but for some reason, yeah, I don't
Well,
know why.
and
I
and
don't.
and that's not a good thing or a bad thing, just an
Yeah.
observation and a question. But where many of us who were born in the US and who
Mhm.
eventually left maybe didn't have that exposure to other places, you at
Mhm.
least were going to Panama every year.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
your interest was piqued. You
Yeah.
applied to Disney English. And for those watching who don't know, okay, when you teach abroad, particularly in China, there is a hierarchy that is going to impact, I think, the quality of your experience,
Yeah.
how much money you make.
Yeah.
And Disney English, that was a training school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a training school. Yeah. So that meant
So,
that we worked, in the evening, like after kids would get out of school, they would come to us to like, begin their English lessons or better their English, capacity to understand, read, communicate. Yeah.
because I don't know if most people realize China has the most English speakers in the world. I mean, because they
Gosh, it's
also have the
amazing how much
most
like they have
people.
the most of. Yeah.
Well, because they have the most people in the world. So,
Yeah.
like, it's it's not, because I had talked to somebody once and they were like, oh, they're learning English to be like us. And I'm like, no, baby, that's not it. They're learning English because that is the language of business. And they
Yeah.
want to compete on a global stage. So they want to make sure their kids learn English. And
Yeah.
when you contrast that with a country like the United States, where they're like, psh, why you need to learn a foreign language?
Yeah.
It's interesting and it's very telling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Disney English hired you.
Mhm.
I am not familiar with the packages available at a training school, but did
Mhm.
they cover your visa process, the cost for that? Did they cover your airfare?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And let me just say that, like, and it's funny because it's like, I was talking to, one of my best friends who's still there in Shanghai, and we were like comparing, like, hey, how much did you get paid, when you first came over? And so, I was saying, like, oh, well, I got 17 and change. I don't remember what it was, like 17.5 or something RMB, so Chinese dollars. And she was like, oh my gosh, she only got 12, but she did get a free apartment. And so, we were just thinking, like, gosh, it's amazing, like, how much more money we made once we left the training center. But yes, they did cover the visa process. That was completely taken care of. The flight was taken care of by them. Let me see. There was like, the health insurance was phenomenal, which is funny because it's like, in America, like, I really never thought so much about the health insurance, even though I had health insurance. But crazy enough, like, I ended up needing it there. Like, I had like surgery on my finger. And so anyway, like, I mean, it really was a good package. The salary was low compared to like what I ended up making like once I left there. But yeah, yeah. So they did cover those things.
Okay, so we had a question. Wow, what is the typical day like for Chinese students? It's long. I will
Yeah,
tell you that it is very
yeah,
long. Because when you were working at the language school, those kids would have put in an entire day of
yeah.
school. And would they
Mm-hmm.
come to you? Did they come to you directly from school? Or would they have like time at
Let's see
home and
now.
then like after dinner?
So like, let me see now. So the school would typically end like at 4, but they might come after the school because, like, like many of the schools have like an after school program. So even though we are an after we, well, when I worked with Disney, like, was an after school program, many of the schools had an after school program where they taught them, like, art or calligraphy or dance or music or, soccer, something like that. So yeah, some of them honestly came to us like after school, even though it was like, say, like 5:30, 6 o'clock. Yeah, they would be coming from after school. A few of them were lucky, some of them were lucky where it's like they didn't have that. They would be able to go home and change and eat with their family and then come to us. So it just kind of depended, like, what the parents involved them in. You know, it might be like a 12, 13 hour day by the time they finished with us. Yeah.
Where I taught, the school I taught at was housed at on the campus of the number one high school in the city. And when I say number one, just schools have numbers. Doesn't necessarily
Mhm.
mean it was the best school, although I think it was. But they had to be to class. God, I can't even remember if it was like 7:30 or 8. And
Yeah.
their school day ended at 10 p.m. because
Wow.
when their day was over with us, like
Yeah.
3:40, they had a break, and then they had their Chinese classes because our kids
Yeah.
were getting a high school certificate from British
Yeah.
Columbia, and they were getting the Chinese one. And
Yeah.
then they would have a break for dinner, and then they would have class after dinner. So the day was very, very long.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, now
Yeah.
you were in Beijing.
Mhm.
Now, were you in Beijing during the initial COVID lockdown?
Woo. Yeah. Okay, so this is what had happened was, okay, so, like, I never went back to America. I still have not been back to America.
You ain't
Um
missing nothing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I am going actually, let me see now. So on Thursday morning, I'm flying to Medellin from Cartagena, which is where I am now. And, because I'm like, oh, well, let me see this city and this city. So I'm going to be in Medellin for like 4.5 weeks. And then I'm going to go home to see my family finally for like a week or 2 weeks in Miami. But anyway, what had happened was, we went away on Chinese New Year. Like Chinese New Year's, like,
Oh yeah, I was
like,
I was in Europe. I was
yeah, yeah.
bopping around Europe. I was sitting in the Shanghai airport waiting for my
Mhm.
flight to London. And my friend, who currently lives in Panama now,
Mhm.
sent me this article about this mysterious virus in Wuhan. And she was like, I don't know if
Mystery.
this is near you, but be
Yeah.
careful. And
Yeah.
me being ignorant of Chinese geography, not realizing I was in Hefei. So I was just like 2 hours away from
Yeah.
Wuhan on the train.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever. I'm going to Europe. I'm having a good time. So no, I was right there
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, so I mean, it's like it's considered like the largest mass migration, the Chinese New Year. So many Chinese people go back home to their villages and their families, and they celebrate like the advent of like the new year. And honestly, it's exciting. It really is. And so I was like, oh, well, where's somewhere that I've wanted to go that I'm gonna go now. And even though like it was far, 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 far away, I've always wanted to go. Well, not always wanted to go there, but I've wanted to go there for a really long time. So I'll say it, and I'm gonna say it, and people might laugh. But okay, so like I've loved Tina Turner since like I saw her at a concert, years ago when I was a little girl. And so anyway, I read this autobiography she wrote, and she wrote that she lived in Switzerland. So that's where I went because I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll see Tina in the streets. I don't know. So anyway, so I went to Switzerland with a friend. And yeah, I went to Switzerland, but I also went to Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein is a small country next to Switzerland.
I actually was trying to, I was trying to hit as many countries as possible. And I was trying to figure out a way to hop over to Liechtenstein, but
Yeah.
I couldn't make it work. Like Liechtenstein, Andorra, I couldn't make it like make sense. So I
Mhm.
primarily hung out in Eastern Europe.
Okay, okay. And okay, so this is my reason for going to Liechtenstein. So like, okay, so the princess, they still have royalty of Liechtenstein. She's Afro-Latino. She's from Panama. And so this prince, I know it sounds fantastical, but it's true. So this prince, he met her like New York. I think she was like at a fashion design school or something like that. And so he married her and brought her back to Liechtenstein. So anyway, so that again, the same way I thought I was gonna somehow see Tina in the streets, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll
You
just
never
see the
know.
princess in
You
the
never
streets. You
know.
never know. And then I'll be like, hola, or actually in Panama we say que sopa. so, so so I was like, maybe that happened. That didn't happen, obviously. But anyway, so I was there, and Disney had emailed us, and they were like, "Hey, there's this going on. We're gonna start working online, but we don't know what the hours are. And obviously, I was like in a different time zone, and I thought, okay, well, once I finish one more week, it'll be 3 weeks now that we've been in Switzerland." So I'm like, oh, well, I'll just go back home. And my friend, he was like, oh, well, no, come back to New York with me. He's like, it's safe. It's safe in America. And I'm like, but what am I gonna do? No, no, no. It's okay. It's okay. I said, all my stuff's already in Beijing. I'll just go. And he's like, all right, but you're gonna regret it.
You know
And
what? I had the same thought because I did a day trip to Chernobyl, and
mm-hmm.
on the way back to Kiev, I got the text that said they canceled my flight. And I was
Yeah,
like, oh, this is getting serious. I
yeah,
still had like another 2 weeks of my trip left, and was like, okay, so like if I'm stuck here, where can I go? Where can I stay for cheap?
yeah,
All of this. But I kept thinking, all of my stuff is in China. My dog
yeah,
is in China. I did not want,
yeah.
because I know a lot of people opted to, let me just post up in another
Oh
country.
yeah,
My school is
yeah,
online. I'll do that. And I just kept thinking about, what if I can't get in?
yeah, yeah,
All
yeah,
of all of the stuff I own in the world, because it all fits into 3 suitcases. All of it is in China. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Exactly.
I was doing this 28-day trip with a carry-on bag that's small enough to fit underneath the seat.
Oh
So I
wow,
was like, that's where my
wow.
stuff is.
Yeah, yeah. No, exactly. I kept thinking like, okay, yeah, all my stuff is there. I mean, because, I mean, I was at the time I was like living with a boyfriend in Colorado, and like, I mean, I had like either like given away or sold my stuff, but everything else was brought with me. The stuff that's still at my mom's house is like, like diplomas and stuff, it isn't like consequential. Well, to me, I mean, to her it is, but it isn't like, that important. I would need to bring it, to another continent. But yeah, everything was there. So I was like, no, I'm gonna feel really out of place, if I just don't go and at least see how things are. And hey, if I don't like it, get my stuff and go. So yeah, so I went back to Beijing February 9th, and believe it or not, like everything was fine. I mean, yeah, like there were barely people were on the streets,
Okay,
but
because you literally got back, I think the day before I did. I got back on like February 10th, February
okay.
11th.
Yeah.
And um, I was supposed to fly into Shanghai because Shanghai was a 2-hour train ride, but
Mhm.
um, there was no one at the airport except
Yeah.
the people on my flight.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
was not even sure I'd be able to get a train back. And then when I
Yeah.
got to my apartment, they'd been in lockdown for at least a week. And I
Oh wow.
showed up. I do not speak Mandarin.
Yeah.
Um, I have no way to, I'm trying to explain to them, like, I just got back today.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have the little ticket that says I'm allowed in here. Like, I can show
Yeah.
you my key. It was a
Yeah.
hot mess. It was a
Yeah.
hot
Yeah.
mess.
Yeah. And well, which is fascinating because lots of people were asking me, they're like, but like it was fine. And I'm like, no, really, it was. I mean, and I'm saying it was fine, not in terms of like, the general surroundings, because it was eerie. Like there was barely, any cars on the street.
And in
And
Beijing, that
that's
never
not normal.
happens.
Yeah, and there was barely anyone hanging out. And so I was like, huh, that's interesting. That's interesting. But yeah, when I came into the airport, they were like, okay, come on in. And I did see people like, starting to wear like okay. So like this woman
Hazmat
fashioned
suits,
like
I'm sure.
so this one fashioned, like this, like face shield out of this like big water jug. So I did see people starting to like try to protect themselves. And I had been able to buy a mask in Switzerland. I think it was like for 50 euros, and
Okay.
it was only four masks. And when I was at the pharmacy, so because we went to the pharmacy to get it, and I said, but why is this so expensive? I said, it's not even here yet. And the pharmacist said, oh, it will be. And I looked at her and I'm like, are you sure? And she said, I'm a scientist. Trust me, it will be here. And I was like, oh, crap.
I was in Prague, and I knew that once I got back to China, I was going to be expected to have a mask. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I was like, I gotta find one while I'm here. I'm going to pharmacies. The pharmacies are like, nah, we ain't got nothing. They
Yeah.
everything was sold out. I
Yeah.
ended up going to some kind of hobby shop, and they sold a mask with like a built-in ventilator. That
Oh,
was
okay.
literally the only one I could get.
Yeah.
And it was probably like $30.
Yeah.
And I was so mad that I had to spend that, but
Yeah.
there was nothing else available. And I
Yeah.
knew that once I landed in Beijing, not Beijing, Shanghai, I did not
Mhm.
want them to be like, oh, you don't have a mask. You have to go to this special place. Cause I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be detained.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, even in Beijing, like it wasn't easy to find a mask. Like in a WeChat group, like eventually I did, get access to like, a box of regular masks. But yeah, initially it was like, where are the masks? Where are the masks? But yeah, so when I came back, the apartment complex, they were like, because because like I mean, okay, so like I lived, I think it was like one, two, three. I think I lived like three, four streets away from work. But to save money, I like lived like in this Chinese, apartment complex. And so
Okay,
like,
wait, wait, wait. Let me stop you right there because the folks watching this may not understand what you're saying that you're not saying.
yes.
Like, I talk a lot about the variation of apartments available here in Mexico
Yeah.
City. And there are some places that are really a step above a prison cell, like that I would. So when you say very, very Chinese, did you even have a Western toilet?
Actually, yes, I did because so like, funny enough, in that specific apartment building, so it was a complex, but in that specific one out of all of the ones, I don't know how many others also, but I had gone through this company called Zaroom or Zroom, Ziroom. And so like this is an app where like, they can help you find the apartment and they'll speak English and they'll take care of everything. So you pay them, everything's
That's
included,
the kind of thing you have in a big city like Beijing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in Hefei, no, you don't get that.
Yeah, so like the Wi-Fi, like everything's included. So yeah, I definitely had a Western toilet because that I did not want to be squatting every single freaking day, and I didn't want to be doing that. So yeah, so I had a Western toilet. Yes. It was such a small, I think, yeah, it was such, I think it's the smallest place I've ever lived in my entire life, but it was such a small place. But anyway, but yeah, so I mean, look, I'm gonna say this, in America, I really didn't speak to my neighbors. I mean, unless like they happened to say hi, then I'd say hi. It just cause was kind of like a thing. I don't know why, because like in Panama, like that's not how people behave. But look, I just kind of followed the custom of how it was in America. And many times people, we wouldn't speak, we weren't like unhappy with each other. But we just were like, okay, I'm doing me and you're doing you, like, and yeah, we're not gonna mix. And so yeah, so when I came back, like people were like, who are you? So I showed my police registration because you have to register at the police station to like be like show like authenticity of like that you actually live somewhere. And the sort of my police registration, I was like, well, I'm going in now, bye bye. And so they were like, oh, where have you been and where you come from? And because there was this whole like idea of like, oh well, the foreigners are bringing COVID, and I know that that sounds weird, but yes,
No,
that is the absolute
when
truth of what was
we went
happening.
back to work face to face, what was that, like April 2020? Very much the tide had shifted and it was
Mhm.
very anti-foreigner. And that was one of
Yeah.
the reasons. And it was like, y'all really believe in this shit. Like,
Hmm.
and because that's what they were told, that's what they
Yeah.
went with. So yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I too was like, I I was very concerned about being able to get into my apartment. I didn't want
Hmm.
to be detained. I did not want them to
Yeah.
say, "Oh, well, you've got to go to the quarantine center," or anything like that, because I just didn't think I could navigate that. And I
Yeah.
didn't, you know.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And yeah, no, and I mean, there like, now in Shanghai, well, when I was in Shanghai, yes, there was like the quarantine center, but when I came to Beijing, like there was like no concept of
well,
that. I had no knowledge of
this was still very, very
that.
early
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
When we're talking about a point at which I thought the West has a 2 month head start. They will
yeah,
figure something out,
I
and this
know.
whole thing will blow over by June.
Yes,
Um, and
yeah,
so the West dropped the ball. And as we know, because we still living with it now,
yeah,
that did not happen. Okay.
yeah.
So the decision to leave Beijing and move to Shanghai, what
Mhm.
motivated that decision?
It really was just, motivated by Disney English shutting down. They shut down in June. Like, I mean, and it's interesting because it's like, I kept thinking about and wanting to move to a kindergarten because, I spoke with some friends and they were like, oh, like before the Chinese New Year, they were like, oh, well, where are you going for winter vacation? And I was like, winter what? What's that? And
Yeah,
so
because you
so
don't
I
have that at a
so
training school.
yeah, so I realized like, wow, there was a lot that I was missing out on, like time off. And so yeah, I really had wanted to move to some like another institution. And so anyway, so when I would speak with my manager, I would say, oh, well, I'm thinking about moving. And she was like, oh, okay, well, you need to give us, the policy was like 3 months, 3 months. And so, 2 weeks before I had told her that, and I said, okay, well then, I'll go ahead and start giving my notice. 2 weeks later, they shut down. And I was like, and I asked her, I said, why would you even say that when we're shutting down? I could have just gone ahead. Like, what? She's like, well, I didn't know. And I'm thinking,
Even if she
mid.
did, she wouldn't have told you because was
Exactly.
she Chinese? Because
Yeah.
that's they're going to save face,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
regardless of how it inconveniences you, they're going to save
Yeah.
face. So we're talking about the summer of 2020, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I left July of 2020.
Okay.
It took some work to get out. It was not an easy thing,
Oh, just
but
like me leaving Shanghai.
oh
The
no,
ticket was so expensive. The process was not easy. I ended up spending my last night at an airport hotel. And okay, so real quick, I'll tell you what happened. So like like Shanghai had the lockdowns like starting from March. So it wasn't just 2 months, as some people think. Starting from March, there were places that were locking down. And my building had started locking down in March. They had opened back up for like a week or 2 weeks, and then they locked back down, like right before the lockdown. So like mine started actually in March. But anyway, so when we opened back up, like June 1st, and everything seemed okay, like it was constantly like in the back of our minds, like, okay, might we lock down again, because there'd be abnormal results. But anyway, so like the day before my flight, or days before my flight, a Chinese friend, Yang Yang, she was supposed to come over, and we were going to talk for like the last time, even though we had seen each other like the week before. But I was really going to miss her friendship. And then in the WeChat group, they said, hey, we've had some abnormal results. And I'd heard from friends, they were like, oh yeah, my building was locked down for like 2 days. And I was like, this doesn't
let
sound
me
too good. This
interrupt
doesn't
you
bode
here.
well.
Let me interrupt you here, because
Hmm.
those of you who are not living in China may not understand what this means. If Because China has the no COVID policy. Okay. So that means if there
Yeah.
are abnormal
Zero
results,
COVID.
somebody
Yeah.
tests positive, it's not just, oh, y'all stay home. No, workers show up and erect barricades around your building so you can't leave. So,
Yeah.
so when
Yeah.
we say
Yeah.
lockdown,
They're
we
like,
mean
we're
like
not letting
for
you get
real.
out.
Yes. And you have to stay locked
Yeah.
down
Yeah. Yeah.
until they deem it is safe to remove the barricades and whatnot. So you definitely did not want to risk getting caught in a lockdown when you're trying to get out.
Exactly. Yeah. And so like, so when I saw that in the WeChat group, I was about to message, like the group and say, well, I have a flight tomorrow, like, and just ask a question like, so would I be able to leave? And but someone else in the building who's Chinese, she messaged, and I used the translate function, and she had messaged the same thing. She said, I have a flight tomorrow. Will I be able to leave? And so many people told her, go now. Do not stay here. Go now. And I was like, you know what? That's okay. I understand. Yeah. And so I messaged my friend Yang Yang, and I said, hey girl, before, when you come over here, it's not gonna be hanging out time. It's gonna be help me get out of here and get to an airport hotel. And so she was like, no problem. I'm 20 minutes from there. And I messaged the driver who I had ordered, and I was like, instead of tomorrow, can you come now? And he's like, why? What happened? And I sent him the screenshot, and he was like, I got it. I'm on my way. I'll be there in 45 minutes. Because, everyone knows what that means when they're like, there's abnormal results. Everyone knows what that is. The next day, my, what's it called, water filtration system, because like the water is not great there to drink, so it's like the company, they were going to come and remove it since I was leaving, and I messaged them, and they were like, no problem, I understand. And I gave them the key, like the keypad code to the apartment, and I was like, if you can get into the building, great, you can come get it. I'll tell the landlord you're coming to get it. And yeah, and so I was giving I was giving away this bookcase, and I messaged the woman. I said, I'm out of here now. I've told the landlord you're coming. If the building's open, he understands you're gonna come and get it. And she's like, nope. Like, everyone understands
Yeah.
what that means. Like, go, 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 go. It's go time. Like, everyone understands. And so yeah, she came over. She immediately got on her phone. She got me the airport room, and she was like, they'll be able to fit you in the next hour. And then I was like, great. I said, help me get my bags out of this building. And within an hour, I was gone. I mean, thankfully, I had already, packed up everything.
Yeah.
So, it was okay. I mean, I was waiting for someone to come get the bedding because they were going to turn it into like pet bedding. But I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm out of here.
No,
So,
no, you made the right move. Now, one of the things I was curious about, because when I left, it was because it at that point in the summer of 2020, China's borders were closed. For
mhm.
the folks who were looking for jobs, that meant like all of these schools that would normally be hiring foreigners, because there were
Yeah,
a bunch of people who got stuck outside of China and never got to come back in.
yeah,
Um, there were so the borders were closed. There was no way to get in new teachers. So if you wanted to work and you were in China, you really could, you had some room to negotiate.
yeah.
But did it ever occur to you after living through that first part of COVID
Ooh,
to
good
leave?
question.
Because
Good
see, like
question.
when I showed back up in August of 2019, I already knew I was leaving. I was
Yeah,
already counting down days.
good
Okay.
question. Good question. Good question. Very good question. Because lots of people, they were like, so you stayed for 2 more years? Why? And okay, look, in my defense, okay, I don't know. So, look, I'm gonna liken it to, like, I don't know, the first boy that I was ever with. Okay, look, this was my first. Okay, so I felt like I wanted to stay. Okay, so this is what happened. So after like those 4 months in Beijing, and okay, and look, let me just say this. Like, okay, so back to Beijing. When I came back, like within 36 hours, I was at like a neighborhood burger restaurant. Um, and so like Disney English was like in a mall, and there was like this burger restaurant, Qdoba, and I was at a
Hey,
neighborhood burger
y'all were
restaurant.
still free. We were not.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
had to have I had to have a ticket to prove that
Oh,
I could leave my apartment. The only place we were allowed to go was to the grocery store.
mm-mm.
That was it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So I
y'all
mean,
were still
like,
free. Because I can remember looking at your Facebook pictures, and I was like, oh, they living it up in Beijing.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
not.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and I mean, we came and went. Like, there was no concept for me of self quarantine or anything. There was like no one saying like, "Hey, you need to stay." The very next week, that's when China said, wait a minute, people are coming back and they're misbehaving. But yeah, within 36 hours, I was at a neighborhood burger restaurant with a bunch of friends and having a good time. So anyway, so within those few months, like we were working online, like barely, because Disney English really was not set up to like do online. So it was barely, I was still going out, meeting lots of people, having a good time. That's when I that's when like I first started going on dates with Chinese men. I was like, oh well, I have time, oh well, I'm gonna meet Chinese men. So anyway, so what I'm saying is that, like, I really was like enjoying myself, believe it or not. I know it sounds crazy, but I really was. And so then when the opportunity to move to Shanghai, I was like, okay, well, I'll give Shanghai like, 1 year, and then I'll see what happens. Cause I was like, again, still thinking like, okay, surely the borders are gonna relax. And then, then we'll be able to like travel to like, Southeast Asia, which was my goal in living there. Like, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, South Korea, excuse me, all these different places. And that didn't happen. And then
No.
and then
And it
and then
still may not happen for quite a few more years.
Yeah, because when I was there, I saw an article that, was going around from like a reputable news agency that was saying that Beijing, the capital, had said, "Hey, we're thinking 5 more years."
Years.
And
Yep.
I was like, "Oh, not for
So for those of you watching this, now think about what you've been doing for the last 2 years.
me."
Um, in China, because of zero COVID, the borders are basically closed. If you leave, there's no guarantee. So, like you summer break, you can leave, but you probably can't get
Yeah,
back in.
yeah.
So, and they're having these lockdowns where they are literally locking up the
Oh no, I think it's frozen.
I'm back. Hold on, y'all.
Oh, there we go.
Literally, something went boom outside and the light, everything went out.
Oh my God. The other day, like, okay, so the lights went out, and okay, so let me just say this that, okay, there's lots of me that's like really ignorant about some things because this is not something that obvious. This is why I say that I don't feel like an immigrant because, like, I have not been experiencing these things. Honestly, even in Panama, when like my grandparents would say, "Hey, you better take a shower soon. You better like get ready for bed soon because you never know, there might be a blackout." But that never happened. Okay. So like, so there was a blackout here, and I was like, what happened? Where did the electricity go? I was on my computer. What happened? And so, this guy, he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We're a third world country." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot where I was for a moment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry."
So, bef-
My fault.
bef-
Yeah.
before my electricity went out, I think we were talking about the fact that the zero COVID policy is going to be in effect for probably another 5 years. And I
Yes.
know with like the people I used to work with, several of them were like, we can't live like this anymore. We
Yeah.
are leaving at the end of this school year that just passed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, oh my God, the WeChat group. So I was in only two WeChat groups for leaving. and they were both full at full capacity. Like WeChat groups can be like up to 500. Like they were both like 400 something. And so like, you know, and it was every month that like they were changing the group and saying, hey, these are the new guidelines or restrictions or protocol or experiences for this month. So there was the one for June. I was in the one for July. There was the one for August, September. So yeah, there were like lots of WeChat groups where people were like, I'm out of here. And then, you know, when we opened up June 1st, oh my God, like everyone was taking videos of how long the lines were at the government office, the entry exit bureau to get your criminal report, you know, because it's like, you know, say like if you were going to like another country to teach or work, they might be like, well, what have you been up to for the last few years? You know, have you been obeying the laws? You know, just like an FBI criminal report to get into China, I might need that for another country. Strangely enough, no one ever asked me for that, but I still went ahead and got it. But the lines were horrendous. Like so many people were trying to get out.
Yeah. Which really makes me wonder I guess they had loosened up the ability to bring people in, but folks on the outside watching this, especially what went down in Shanghai, like you said, that lockdown started in March and went through early June?
Yeah, June 1st. But yeah, they've loosened it up because like before you needed something called a pickup letter where the institution would be like, you know, yes, we want this person to come, you know, they're going to be working for us. So everything's on the up and up. But now they've done away with that. And I know that because like, you know, up until yesterday, or maybe this morning, I was in the Shanghai Facebook group. But then I realized, wait a minute, why am I looking at any of this stuff? I don't want to know anymore. So then I removed myself from it. But yeah, I saw people still saying, hey, I got this job offer. I'm on my way. And
well,
in the group saying, stay away.
In the chat, they're saying that you sound a little different now. Did you have a mic before or lose a mic? Finger over the microphone?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it was like, do I sound more muffled or?
Kind of like you're talking into a tin can.
Oh no. Okay, you know what? Let me see if I can find no, I don't know what happened, honestly. Okay, you know what? Let me get some earbuds. So hold on a moment.
Okay. While she's looking for earbuds, I see your questions in the chat. So please continue to drop them in there and we will get to them. This live has been nothing if not eventful, huh, y'all? I appreciate y'all sticking it through. I really do. You know.
All right. So let's see now.
Okay, that is better.
Oh, is it better now?
No, whatever you were doing before. Say something.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you sound great. You sound great now.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. Okay. The nature of living abroad. Okay.
Okay, because now you don't.
Really? Okay. That's weird. Okay, all right. So hold on a moment. Let me put this in. And then, let's see if that changes anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is the way that I hold the phone, but
it might be because you sound fine right now. So maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's all right. What it was.
Well, then if I sound fine right now, then I'll leave it.
Okay.
I'll leave it alone.
So, so did we get to the answer to the question of why you did not leave?
Oh, whoops.
Summer 2020.
Whoops. Okay. Because I really thought, okay, well, maybe things will change. So like the borders will really loosen up. So like, in that fantasy thinking, I guess, the same fantastical thinking I was thinking when I would meet, Tina Turner. It was the same fantastical thinking that I had. And, also, I had some good experiences. And, I was like, oh, well, I'd really like to see more of this country before I go. Even if this is like the only Southeast Asian, I'd like to see more. I'd like to work and build up my resume as a teacher. And actually, that really was my main reason. I don't want to make it seem like I was partying. That really was my main reason because, I liked working with kids. I had not done it before, except in like an official capacity. And so, yeah, I did like working with kids and teaching them. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just stay here and build up my resume.
Okay. So
Yeah.
no, that's a valid, that is a valid response.
Yeah.
Okay. So now when I left China, things looked very different in China versus the rest of the world because we were back outside. Uh, most folks weren't wearing masks.
Yeah.
Because now here in Mexico City, I do wear a mask, but because China's borders were so closed
Mm-hmm.
and their testing regime was so strict and their it felt like, okay, the people are here. So as long as we like test people and
Yeah.
monitor them, we can be normal.
Yeah.
Now, that's when I left in July 2020. When I got, to the West, you know, we was back at square one. I think Mexico
Yeah.
City was just coming out of their first lockdown.
Yeah.
So the summer into the fall of 2020, what was life like for you teaching?
Okay. So actually, so how does it sound now? Does it sound
You
clear?
good? Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, because I didn't want to keep on if it was the same. Okay, yeah, so let me see. So let me see what happened. So then I was
Well, I
living in
mean, because it might
Shanghai.
have just been life and it might have been uneventful.
Yeah, honestly, it really was. That's why like I had difficulty recalling, but yeah, it really was. I mean, I was living in Shanghai, although yes, in like the suburb, but yeah, I was living in Shanghai and I was experiencing like Shanghai and it was fun and interesting and working at my new school and yeah, it really was and I was planning all my vacation trips within China, so like I ended up going to like Zhangjiajie, which is like the place where Avatar was like, inspired because of the high mountain peaks and let me see. I went to Guilin, which is like this beautiful like water area and where else did I go? To Harbin, which is like negative 20 degrees. To like the
Hmm.
ice and snow sculpture. So yeah, I mean, I was planning on my trips, and then what started happening was like slightly after that, funny enough, around Chinese New Year, it always seems like around Chinese New Year, like this starts happening. Um,
Well, think about it. It is the largest migration of people in the world. It
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
winter, it's cold, people are all up on each other. So, no, it makes sense.
Yeah, but so then the government was like, "Oh, well, it's best if the teachers don't start going anywhere or like people don't start going anywhere because like, we've had all of these different cases and so the schools were telling us like, "Hey, we really don't want you to go anywhere." And I was planning honestly on just going because I was like, You're not gonna tell me what to do." I know that's so that's so silly of me. But so I had booked this trip to like Yunnan, like this province, and I was gonna go like on this wine wine tour because they have like winery there, and I was gonna like eat food there. And yeah, but then the tour agency was like, "Oh, we have to cancel, sorry." And after that, then I was like, I'm not gonna bother planning anything. And then that's when I started thinking, you know what, maybe I'll just do one more year, and then that'll be 3 full years of like being like in an educational setting with kids, and then I'll start looking into other opportunities. Yeah, and so that was like the beginning of, yeah.
So, what, though, is this about the time that you started your podcast?
No, let me see. So I started it, let me see. December 31st. Yeah, because I was like, I'm going to start this before the new year. So before this year, 2022 started, I'm going to start this. So yeah, December 31st was when I started it. And I say started in terms of I got the LLC just because I wanted to make sure like the name was going to be safe. And that's when I started like putting the idea together. I didn't start really interviewing people until like January. So I interviewed January, February, and then just maybe like a week in March. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you said you kind of lived in the suburbs of
hmm
Shanghai. Where you lived, did you get locked down, or was it just you were feeling the impact because the main part of Shanghai was locked down?
So in 2021, so August 2021 to what was it? No, because we're into August 2020 to July 2021. That's when I lived in the suburbs. So I lived in this place called Hongtao.
Hmm.
And so like when I was there, like there was no metro station that was like in that
Oh
area.
my
And
gosh.
it's funny because it's like, so I took Didi all the time. But anyway, so I remember like when the metro opened, like it was like 4 months after I had moved there. And like say if someone wanted to come over, they'd be like, "Oh, well, what metro is this?" And I'd say, "Oh, well, it's line 18." And they would say, "No, there's no line 18. Stop joking. There's no line 18." And I'd say, "No, it just opened." And they'd be like, okay." And I'd be like, "Okay, so do you know where like the Disney is?" And they were like,
That's
"Yeah." And
far.
I
That's
yeah, and I'd
far.
be like, 30 minutes south of that, that that's where it is. And they were like, "Okay." So yeah, it's pretty crazy. But no, so up until July 2021, I lived in that suburb area. And then I got a job at a closer kindergarten. And that's when I was like, I am moving to Jing'an. I'm moving to downtown, downtown, downtown. So then July 2021 to, when I just left, which
Okay.
was July 6th.
So then yeah,
Yeah.
you were locked down then.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was in the epicenter. Yes, I was. Yes. Yes, I was in
And
ground zero. Yes.
had you already decided that it was time to leave before that lockdown started?
Okay, so I'm gonna say this. Okay, so there are times when, as an expat, even people on my podcast have said this, where like you're not happy where you are, okay? And so I became really unhappy in Shanghai, in China. And it came to a culmination Thanksgiving because I was at a friend's house for Thanksgiving. And later on, she would tell me, she's like, "That's the saddest I've ever seen you." And I just wondered, like, what in the world was going on? So it was November 2021. And I was so extremely sad. And I was like, why am I here? What am I doing here? Like, why am I putting up with this, living in this place? Like, I don't know why. I mean, I did know why because I was trying to get that like
But
that
it starts to
stuff on my
weigh.
CV. Exactly.
Quality of
Yeah.
life. Quality of life.
Exactly. Yeah. Quality of life. Yeah. Because I mean, look, I'll say this like being in China, I have not been in a relationship, and that was abnormal for me. Like in America, I think I went like 10 months without or a year without a relationship. Once I actually started dating as an adult. And that was because like I was trying to work on my master's, but it was too difficult working full time on my master's. But that's why, because I needed that time to like focus on studying. But other than that, I've been in relationships. I've been married, I've had boyfriends. So like it was look, it was extremely difficult for me like not being in one. So anyway, so that was one of several things. Being black there, I'll be honest about this, even though yes, I was one of those few black women who did go on dates with black men, and they were very nice and
Black
interested and
men or
interesting. I'm
Chinese men
sorry,
or
sorry,
both?
Chinese men. Chinese
Okay.
men, yeah. I did go on a date with a few black men, like they were from different African nations, but anyway, yeah, so Chinese men. Sorry, I'm thinking about black men right now. So Chinese men. But still there was this uncomfortable feeling that I had quite often of being black there. And yeah, everyone's experience can be different because there's some black people there, they've been there for 15 years, and for whatever reason they love it. Great, good for
It's
them.
it's
um
wild that you're saying this because I, in my head, because when I talk about my time in China, it was not great. And I will
mhm,
often, my caveat is always, there are a lot of folks who have a great experience who
yeah,
live in like Beijing and Shanghai. And I would have put you in that group because
yeah,
I saw these pictures of you. Y'all are
yeah,
out at the restaurant, y'all are going
yeah,
to this
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
you're taking this class.
yeah, yeah. And
So
and
that's
I
very
did I
interesting to
did
hear.
I did have a good time, but I felt honestly extremely, like bereft, because it was like I had not had like a committed relationship, a partner, and I need that. Yes. And I know some women are out there saying, "Oh, well, I don't need a man." That's great for you, but yes, I need a man. Yes. I'm one of those women. I
It's
need a man.
okay.
Yes. I don't necessarily need a man for like my financial well-being, obviously, because I take care of myself. But yes, I need a man in my bed and on my arm and in my thoughts and prayers. Yes, I do. Yes. So so I found it extremely difficult. And I know people say, "Oh, well, there are foreigners to date." Yes, I did date some foreigners, but there are lots of foreigners who they're there to have a good time, or they want to date locals, or for whatever reason it didn't work out. So that was extremely difficult for me. Okay. Like missing my family was difficult. I did a podcast episode recently where I'm talking about food and I started crying. I mean, like, if you listen to it like right
Well,
now,
you've
you
not
can hear me
been
crying.
home in years, so I can
Yeah.
imagine that.
Yeah. So, I mean, even though I had a good time and like, I was organizing, like, okay, yeah, I was organizing so many events. I was organizing storytelling events, sci-fi events. If you can see my shirt, like,
Yeah.
I'm,
No,
I'm
no,
such a
I saw
sci-fi
you in
girl.
your
Yeah.
Star Trek. Wasn't it a Star
Yeah.
Trek costume? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I said
So,
it's
yeah.
wild to hear you say this because you're
Yeah.
definitely somebody I'd have held up and been like, well, oh,
Yeah.
she had a
Yeah.
great experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, it was a good experience, but this is what I tell people, like I can be content and dislike something at the same time. Those two things can be true. So, believe it or not, before the Shanghai lockdown, I had signed a contract with an international school in Guangzhou for 2 more years.
Oh wow.
Yes. Yes. So I was going to end up being there for 5 years instead of the now 3 years. Yes. And the reason I had done that was because I was like, well, in Guangzhou, there's lots of Africans there. So, like, it's nicknamed Chocolate City. So I was like, great, I'm going to be around dark bodies like me. And so I'll be happy, I'll be happier. And, maybe I'll meet this guy that I'm supposed to be meeting because also the American embassy is there. So I was like, okay, that might help as well. But yeah, I was going to be there 2 more years. And when the Shanghai lockdown happened, I was like, you know what? I need to get out of here because I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't do this, like, the monotony of the zero COVID, experience. Yeah.
And the never knowing, there's a certain
Hmm.
amount of uncertainty and it's very much you're at the whim of what the government
Yeah.
decides. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so when you decided I've had enough,
Yeah.
i'm I'm going to leave,
Hmm.
um was Colombia as a choice, was that an obvious next step for you?
Well, initially, I had applied to a school in Poland because I was like, oh, well, I want to travel Europe. I have not been throughout Europe. I mean, I've only been to a few countries like France and Spain and England and Italy and Switzerland and Liechtenstein, but I was like, there's so much more. And I had interviewed also, this woman who had gone from from Italy to Poland, and she was having a good experience. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that might be for me because then I can like connect with so many other places. And it wasn't until like, okay, so what had happened was, so I want to be a mom. And so I was doing all this research about like places where I could adopt as a single unmarried woman. um and Colombia is one of those places where there are like lots of children who are like on a waiting list. And I was like, oh, okay, no problem. So then really that precipitated like my move to Colombia. And then I started speaking with like other expats, who had been to Colombia or were in Colombia. And I was like, hey, it's connected to Panama, it's closer to America. I already speak the language. The cost of living is so much better. Yeah, and so like everything just kind of made sense to just start applying to like jobs. Yeah, in Colombia, and then come here. Yeah.
So you're saying that the cost of living in Colombia is better than it was in China?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Okay, so now I don't remember the exact amount of the exchange, but I think it's like $1 is like 4,400 something Colombian pesos. Okay. So like, when they use money here, everything starts with thousand.
Yeah.
It doesn't
No,
mean
and
yeah,
I struggled. Y'all know I'm not a math person. I struggled so
yeah.
hard in Colombia because of that.
Yeah. And so like, like, I mean, okay, so like my braids, okay. So, when I was like looking for someone to like do my hair when I was in Bogota, and I messaged in a group and I said, "Hey, does anyone know anyone who could do my hair?" And so this woman, she messaged, she said, "Oh, there's this one contact. I haven't been to her, but I know she'll come to you. So you don't even have to like leave your hotel room." I said, "Okay." So I messaged the woman and she was like, "Oh, well, normally I charge 250,000, but in your case, I need to charge you 300,000 because you're a little bit farther than where I live, so it's going to take me like 2 hours." And I'm like, "Okay, 300,000. 300,000 is really 64 US dollars."
Oh,
Like,
wow.
so in China, I never paid 64 US dollars to get my hair done. And I would go to them. So I would pay like, and I kept one hairstylist the entire time. And so, I think I paid her like, I don't know, 900 RMB. So $1 is seven.
Six. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's now like probably 6.5, but at the time it was like 7 RMB. Okay. So, like, I mean, that's, when you do the math, like, that's not like, that's more than $100. Okay.
Yeah.
That I was paying US dollars to do my hair, and I was going to her and I was buying the hair. So, whereas this woman, she bought the hair. Okay. And she came to me, and to think like, I only paid her 64 US dollars. So this is what I'm saying. Like, the cost of living is so much different. Like when you go out to dinner, it can be like 10 US dollars. Yes, I am eating at like a local restaurant, but still like it's a nice restaurant. You know what I mean? Yeah, like when I take Uber and stuff, it's like 3 US dollars. Like, that yeah. So it's definitely better. Definitely
Okay.
better.
Now you mentioned Bogota, but you're in Cartagena right now.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
because yeah, I flew in, yeah, because at the time, that's why I was saying it was really difficult to leave Shanghai, because trying to get the flight to Colombia, you know, I could only there were only two airlines that were actually flying, and it was Lufthansa and KLM that I flew on, and they were both only flying into Bogota, the capital. That was it. So I flew into Bogota, and I was like, okay, well, I'll spend a week there, and that way, like, I can see the sights. And then I was like, oh, well, I'll go to Cartagena, which actually I'm gonna end up working in Cartagena, but it's a beach town, so, and I love the beach. And so I'm here for a week, and I'm leaving in the morning. So it's like, I don't know, like in 16 hours is my flight. And then I'm gonna be in Medellin for like 4 weeks. I want to go. I shouldn't even say this, but I tend to be very open, so I'm gonna say this, but I want to take this pole dancing boot camp
Okay.
for 4 weeks. So that's what I'm gonna do. and then go see my family for like a week or 2 weeks in Miami. But
On this
yeah,
channel, we firmly believe that life is for doing those things you want to do, whatever they happen to
yeah,
be. So, yay for the pole
yeah,
dance boot camp.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, okay, and so were you able to find employment in Colombia before you
Hmm.
left? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I interviewed while I was in Shanghai, and this was during lockdown that I interviewed, and I was like, "Hey, look out my window! It's nice outside, but I'm inside." And so anyway, so they liked my exuberant nature, and of course, I seemed like an interesting candidate because it was like, "Well, you're coming from China." So yeah, it was the morning of my flight that they messaged me, and they're like, "Hey, you're hired," and I was like, "Well, great, because I'm already coming
I'm
there."
coming anyway.
So honestly, if I had not found employment, I was just gonna teach online because I had started teaching online back in Shanghai, in addition to like the little bit that I was teaching for the kindergarten. So I was teaching like, part-time for the kindergarten because, since the kindergarten was closed, our teaching hours were cut. So I had started teaching online for Western companies. So I was gonna teach online anyway here. But anyway, so I start September 13th, and yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Said Western companies, because
Yeah.
was it about a year ago when China basically killed the language school market and made
Yeah.
it well, um, okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was. Yeah. And so many people, like I have a friend in Florida. She was doing VIP kids for like, just like a few hours every day. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'm just kind of making some pocket money. I just do it. I just log on for a few hours." But yeah, so many of these companies like boop went under. And yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like companies like Preply and Cambly, Western companies. And then, people have been like continuously asking me like, "Hey, so you teach online, so what?" And so that's why I made like the free PDF, because I was like, "Hey, go there, download it, and you can apply." Even to the company that I applied to in Poland, you can teach online. And I hadn't heard of this company before. It was called American something, but I found out about it through a Facebook group, and so I put it on there because I was like, I didn't know about this company, and they let you teach online too. So yeah.
do you mind sharing the name of the pole dancing boot camp?
Oh yeah, no problem. So it's called pole dance. I think it's DANZE. Okay, so hold on a moment. I'm gonna look it up right now. Okay, let's see. So it's in my WhatsApp, and I was gonna say WeChat, but it's in my WhatsApp.
I
Let's see
finally
now.
deleted WeChat off my phone a little earlier this year because I was like, I don't need this anymore.
Okay, so it's called Pole Strong. And yeah, but then in Spanish they have like a different name for it. It's called let me see. Oh, actually no. Okay, so I just saw the Instagram name. So the Instagram name is Pole Dance Strong 2. So it's POLEDANCESTRONG, the number 2, like the number 2. So anyway, so if you go on there and then, start to message, because I can't really figure out like what's the, now that I've saved the WhatsApp contact, I'm like, I don't know what the WhatsApp contact.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Jalila, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
You're back
Yeah,
now.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so if you go to Pole Dance Strong 2, yeah, and I'm gonna do the one where it's 12 classes for the month, and it's 120 minutes each class. So that means that I'm doing 2 hours, 3 days a week for 4 weeks.
Oh, that is serious. That
Yes.
is seriously. That is
Yes, I'm
serious.
gonna be on the pole. Yes.
Okay. Um, she is going to teach online, but she also has a face-to-face job
Yeah,
at a
exactly. Yeah.
school in
So,
Colombia.
yeah, yeah. So I start my face-to-face job on September 13th. And when I spoke with HR today, this morning, they said, "Oh, well, they're going to send me like a document that I need to complete to make sure that they have all the paperwork," even though like, they had seen a copy of it before, but just so that now like the visa process starts. So yeah, September 13th. And yeah, so I do actually still teach online. Yeah, to make my money so that way like I'm not going through my savings.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Ain't that, nothing wrong with that. Okay,
Hmm.
there were a few questions. Um, Somebody was asking when we were talking earlier about, the length of the school day in for the kids in China. Um,
Hmm.
um, how were the kids with you? Was it were they? I don't know. So how were the
Yeah,
kids with
okay.
you? Is
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
question.
Okay, sure. Like at the training center, so they would be with us like 2 hours. So it was 2 hour classes. It was never any more than that. And they'd have like a 15-minute break. Let me see. And then so sometimes they did split classes. It just depended on like what the parents wanted to do. So, say either they were in the class for 2 hours straight, or they were in the two classes. So 1 hour on say a Monday, and then they'd come back like on a Wednesday. And it just depended on like how much time the parents had. So that was the training center. When I went to go teach at a kindergarten, then I was like considered a homeroom teacher, which is what they like, in the kindergartens. They want you to be with the children all day because it's like immersive English. So I was an English teacher, like that's what my visa said, English teacher, but also something which they colloquially called homeroom teacher. So like from the moment I got there 8 a.m. to the moment like we left at 4 p.m., they were with me all day, every day. So like it was kind of like I was their mommy because it was like, they ate breakfast there, they took a nap there, they had lunch there. Like if they cried, if they peed their pants, if they needed a hug, you know, sure, we had Chinese co-teachers, but I'm also taking care of them like their mama.
They don't grow out of that because I had
Yeah.
high school students and it was still like they needed somebody to take care of them. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
mentioning the school day where I taught pretty much went
Oh
from
yes,
about
5 days a
8
week for the
to
kindergarten.
10,
Yeah.
and that was 5 days a week. The
Yeah.
kids, the majority of the kids, well, they had to live on campus during the week. And
Mhm.
so Friday evenings, they would go home and then they would come back on, I think they came back on Monday morning.
Mhm.
So they lived on campus during the day. Um,
Yeah.
okay, here's another
Yeah.
question we had. Do you still both have friends there? I can't imagine how tough it must be to go through lockdowns again after 2+ years of this.
Yeah, yeah. So it's funny because it's like, so I really only experienced lockdown for like that 3 months, which was harsh enough. But the whole uncertainty, yeah, for like was several years. So that was crazy. But yes, I still have friends there, which, I was just talking to my best friend via WeChat, and I still have WeChat, but I just changed it over to like the westernized WeChat. So like, like it's based now on my American number and my email instead of my Chinese number. And so that information. But yeah, so I still do. Several of my Chinese friends have like Western social media. So like, they see me, on Instagram and stuff like that. And, we still communicate. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of my friends, she's getting married at the end of this year. And I mean, hopefully in years, I will return, not anytime soon, but in years I will return and, maybe like see her children, if she has children. But yeah, I mean, and this is what made it pleasant, honestly, because, look, if it hadn't been for like good friends, I would not have stayed as long as I had. I would not have. I mean, because like I said, I missed having like a relationship, something like committed and serious. I missed that. But if it hadn't been for like good friends, yeah, it would have been even more difficult. Yeah.
Well, I find that interesting. Well, one, you are obviously an extrovert.
Yeah.
I am an introverted introvert. So
Yeah.
I did not really make Chinese friends. And
Mhm.
I asked some of the people I worked with about like, have they made many Chinese friends? And they hadn't.
Mhm.
And because my observation was that the folks in the city I lived in, they were not really interested in
Mhm.
being friends with foreigners. And that may be because I was in a
Mhm.
small town of about 8
Mhm.
million, as
Mhm.
opposed to some place like Beijing or Shanghai, which are
Mhm.
far more international, that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but it
Yeah,
could
yeah.
be because you're
Um
a extrovert, and extroverts make friends everywhere they go.
Well, yeah, that could be. Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes I make enemies too, honestly, but yeah, yeah, I did. Let me see, like, let me think about how I did. I think maybe I made some of these friends because of like events that I ran. See, that's another thing too. It's because like I ran a storytelling event,
Again, that's the
so
kind of thing an extrovert would do. I mean, there's no judgment there. It's just an
yeah.
observation.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
an
yeah.
observation.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that that's why like I had made lots of Chinese friends, and then, of course, going on dates with Chinese men. Look, so let me say this, like, I mean, it first started off is because like, I also went to language exchange events. So, I mean, I didn't really try hard to learn the Mandarin that I know. It kind of just came because I did go to language exchange events, the little kids that I taught, little kids, they say things repetitively, so eventually you just remember, and then you're like, yeah, 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 I got it, you don't have to say it again. um so and the first Chinese guy that I went on a date with, actually I met him at a language exchange. We were talking, and so he was like, oh well, yeah, let's hang out one day, and I was like, how about tomorrow? So I mean, I tend to be like that.
That's
So
the introvert, because I can tell you two words that would never come out of my mouth. How about
yeah,
tomorrow? No,
yeah,
absolutely not.
yeah, yeah.
So
And
so no, that's
it's
great, because it's giving you a far more enriching experience, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And it's funny because, and I know like some people are probably thinking, because even my best friend Keisha, she several times she was like, I don't understand how you don't have a boyfriend. And it's like, obviously, look, there has to be like someone who like is gonna be able to like handle the energy that I'm giving off. You know what I mean? And like, be willing to like, like accept like me talking incessantly about sci-fi, and wanting to like be adventurous. This is why like, this is actually the major reason why like me and my boyfriend in Colorado, we didn't work out, because to this day I tell him, hey, look, you should move abroad. He's a computer programmer and he's white, and I'm like, oh my god, they would put you on a pedestal no matter where you went. And he was like,
yeah.
no, I don't want to leave America. So, so, so yeah,
Hey, you
yeah,
can lead a horse to water, but you can't make
yeah,
them drink now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we had a question. Valerina wondered, would you ever return to work in China? She didn't specify that the question was for you, but anybody who knows me or has watched this channel knows my answer is no.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, look, it did the job that I needed it to, because, I have 3 years now of teaching experience, which I didn't have before. But no, I would go and visit, because there's places that I would like to visit, like Dali and Liang. I've heard that it's beautiful places. I'd like to see, my friend Eliela, as a married woman. I'd like to see Yang Yang again. Yeah, but no, I wouldn't want to go work there again. I feel like, I did what I needed to do for the future, but yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of it.
All
Yeah.
right. And shifting gears, we had a question: pros and cons about living and working in Colombia. This might be a hard one to answer
Yeah.
because you've only been there, what, like 2 weeks?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just about 2 weeks. Let me see. What's today? Today's the 20th, right? Because I
Yeah.
think my flight's on the 21st. Yeah. So today's the 20th. So I've been here for 13 days. Yeah. So yeah, tomorrow's 2 weeks. So in terms of working, the only thing that I would say that is a downside is probably like the salary. Okay, but see, let me preface this, because obviously I was making much more in China. So like, when I left in China, I was making I think it was like 4,000 US dollars every month.
I tell people all the time, nobody comes to Latin America for the money. When I went to
Exactly. Yeah.
Honduras, I took a 60% pay cut from what I was making in the US.
Yeah. So I calculated it, and okay, so like I'm gonna be making, Colombian pesos, and also like there's like a bonus every single month, but it's only gonna equal like I think from what I remember this morning, it was like 1,000 US dollars every month. So
That
from
sounds about right.
4,000
No,
to
that sounds about
1,000.
right.
Yeah. So yeah, the salary, but I did find like Airbnb apartments that I could rent. So for instance, like when I went online this morning, I was checking it out, and I was telling a friend, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna rent a room. She's like, are other people gonna be living in that room? I'm like, no, just me. But so it's basically like a hotel room. And yeah, so I mean, I'm not gonna have like a kitchen or anything like that. I mean, I'll just have like my living space, like a workspace, but that basically it. So I would say the salary, because in order for me, again, like I really don't want to like be like leaning on my savings or anything like that, and I still want to have a good time, then I will need to like just like have like a hotel room space instead of like my whole apartment. So that's the only thing I can think of at this moment.
Is the
um
school giving you a stipend for accommodations or no?
no, it's just the salary, and then it's a monthly bonus. Yeah, so I mean, I guess like the monthly bonus could be considered my housing stipend. But yeah, so it's just that. So it's either that I want to spend it on, like I don't know, like want to include it as part of my salary, or I want to say, oh well, I'm gonna be like using some of this. But still, the monthly bonus is like, I think like 250 US dollars. So yeah, so it's really not that much. And the hotel room that I found is like 380 US dollars. So I mean, so obviously I would be using more than that stipend. I'd be using some of my salary. But still, with that amount, 250 or no, 380 US dollars, coming out of like a total of 1,000, clearly I will be able to save some of my money and not use some of my savings to have a really good time, like paddleboarding classes, which I'm going to be taking because the ones that I took, I kept falling in the water. So anyway, so yeah, so there's plans I already have for that money. I'm going to be learning windsurfing, lots of different water sports. But anyway, so the pros of living, I would say, again, like the opposite is the cost of living. Lots of things are cheap. It's really warm here. I love warm weather. I love the beach. Yeah, so that's basically it. Yeah.
Well, and that's okay, because we just got this question or this comment. Wow, I was really considering Colombia and the salary is a reality check. Here's the thing though, Linnea, don't let that dictate everything, because
Yeah.
generally speaking, if a place has a low cost of living, salaries will generally be low. Now,
Yeah.
China is a special place because of the status and the cachet that goes with
Yeah.
learning English, and
Ka-ching! Yeah.
they want to learn English from people from the US, people from Canada,
Exactly.
people from the
Yeah.
UK. And
Yeah.
the way money gets thrown around in
So they make
China,
it rain.
they are
It
like,
rain.
this is what it
Yeah.
takes to get y'all to come here. We're going to pay that. But like she
Yeah.
mentioned, what Chinese people make is not a lot of money. And again, the cost of living is low.
Yeah.
So all that means is maybe you do something like Jalila is doing and you have a little side hustle, or
Yeah.
you have your own business where you're making USD. What
Yeah.
that means is you don't need to make as much to live
Yeah.
well in Colombia as you would in the
Exactly.
US. So don't
Because
don't let
you can
the
still teach
salary.
online. Yeah, you can still teach online on the weekends. I mean, before I even got here, and I was, and I was in expat Colombian groups, I had this woman hit me up like a month before I even got here, and she was like, "Oh, well, can you tutor my child?" And I said, "Well, you're in Bogota. I'm only going to be there for a week. I don't have a problem with this. I'll send you like lots of free, children's videos and stuff for you to watch with your kids. And I think I sent her like 15 videos. But so that was the reason why I don't have a client, is because she's there, and I was never going to be there for too long. But yeah, you can do lots of side hustles. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, I knew like I was at the top of their pay scale, and it was basically I was making what I started making 20 years earlier,
Mhm.
uh, when I was teaching in the US. However, the school paid for my apartment. They provided me transportation.
Mhm.
They paid for my flights and for me and my kid. My kid got free tuition. That was at least 10 grand a year right there. Cause I told her straight up, if they weren't going to give you free tuition, you couldn't come here because mama couldn't afford to pay for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and they took care of the visas. But even on that little amount of money, I was still able to save 50% of what I made. And I still traveled. I still, did things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it takes a little tweaking, but
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
still have a really nice life
Yeah.
and not make a whole lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I mean, and with the school, like, they've already told me, like, point blank, like, we're gonna provide you with transportation, in terms of, we will pick you up every morning and we will take you back every evening, wherever it is you want to live in Cartagena, no problem. So, obviously, if I want to live like in the city downtown of Cartagena, they told me actually all of the foreigners live downtown. We pick them up, we drop them off. But
Medellin
see, I
or Cartagena.
yeah, Cartagena. Yeah. Because I'm going to Cartagena just for the the boot
Okay.
camp, the pole dancing boot camp. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So yeah, but I mean, I don't. I want to live actually close to school, because I really don't want a long commute. Like, I hate long commutes. I had that in China. But yeah, and there are some schools that will pay even more, depending on, like, if you teach a subject. Like, I've seen the salaries go from like 4 million to like 6 million if you're teaching like a science or a math subject. Yeah, and they'll provide much more. Like, they'll provide,
Yeah.
a higher stipend. I think maybe 6 million is maybe the highest that I've seen. Again, Colombian pesos. So still, so it just depends. And yeah, you can definitely have your side hustle. No one's gonna stop you from doing whatever you want to do on your free time. Yeah.
Okay. Um, all right. There was a super chat that I want to recognize. Thank you, YT, for the super chat.
Oh yeah.
Um, I don't know if y'all had any other questions. Like I said, this live has been nothing if not eventful. Oh, we haven't talked about your podcast. Okay, so
Oh, okay. Sure.
I shared a link to it. Are we home yet? Um, now, talk to us a little bit about your podcast. Who's it for? What's it about?
Yeah. So I mean, it started because of how awful I felt in November, and I was like, this is not my home. Like, I mean, like, no amount of like activities that I run, no amount of like friends that I make, even though people love to say, oh, well, if you have community, like, it makes, no, absolutely
I'm
not.
one of those
No,
people that says that,
no,
but there
no.
are some places that just ain't right.
No, because my thing is, again, like, yeah, like, I again, I'm gonna go back to this. I do need a partner. I do need someone who's in my life, because, and I say this, and not because, like, oh my God, like, I'm lost without a man. It's because,
You
like,
enjoy having a man. Ain't nothing
exactly,
wrong with
yes.
that.
Look, I like the D. I'm not,
Ain't
and I
nothing
like
wrong
it
with that.
consistently. And I like to know that, look, the D is not with lots of other P. Okay. So anyway.
Wait, but you know what the saying is in Colombia, right?
What?
What is it? Feliz los cuatros? Because
What?
there's never just two people in a
Oh,
relationship.
okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
There's
Yeah.
always at
Um,
least four.
Yeah, yeah. I see what you're saying. I have not actually tried to date here. Okay. I have had lots of men so far ask me if I'm single, and I don't answer them because look, I'm not settled anywhere. I'm not even gonna start that right now. But yes, I do need, and then plus again, like I was saying, I'm an adult. I know myself. I've taken the test about the love languages. I know that physical affection is my love language. So look, I know myself. But anyway, so yeah, no amount of community really could have helped me. It really couldn't have. I mean, I had my community, but yeah, that was, it
They wasn't
was not gonna
feeling
help.
that need. I understand.
Exactly. Yeah, it wasn't. So yeah, so anyway, so it's like I felt really awful in back in November. And so yeah, I was like, this is not my home. And then, I was talking to other expats and they're like, yeah, this is not my home either. And then on expat Facebook groups, I would see that lots of people were saying some of the same things, like, I don't know, like, what my plan is, what my path is, I don't know like what my next direction is. And I was like, wow, that kind of sounds like, gosh, like, wow, is this your home, or do you need to find somewhere else? And yes, obviously I do have a home in America, but I'm saying like, a home abroad.
Right.
um and so then that's why I created it, because I was like, are we home yet? Like, have you found the place where, like, like you just like, you breathe, you feel good, you feel satisfied, you know, have you found that place yet? And for most of the expats who I've interviewed, yes, they have found that place. And then there are some who they're like, no, this is not it. I don't know where is it, but so far I'm okay, but this is not it. Yeah. And yeah, so it's for current expats to, like, hear how other expats are doing, and then for future expats to also realize that, like, yes, you too can go abroad. Like before, the woman who I interviewed, who is, a chef, and she's in Mexico. I
Karen.
interviewed this guy. Yes, 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 yes. And I interviewed this guy, and he is in Guatemala, and he's with his wife, and he's been on a tourist visa for several years now. So yes, that's possible. You can stay on a tourist visa. I don't recommend it. So pay attention to
Guatemala
this disclaimer.
Guatemala is a little, I'm not going to use the word lawless, but they are selective about when they enforce the rules.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
say
But
that.
so basically all he did, yeah, and I mean, the business, he says is legitimate. He went to like this government office, he got this, ID card, so that way like he's paying taxes there and it's a legitimate business, but he's still on a tourist visa, and he bought some paddle boards. That's why I started the paddleboard class when I got here. And he bought some paddle boards, he took it back there, he took a paddleboard class in California, and that's his business. There was a guy who I interviewed, 20 years retired from the military. He just recently went back to Honduras. It's his birthday the same week that it's my birthday, so it's not like I can like fly into Honduras and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Um, but yeah, there's people doing lots of different things. So I interviewed this one woman. She moved from, and she's been interviewed so many times, but I found her story so interesting. She moved from New York to South Africa, and so her cost of living went whoops really low. And she runs like a marketing agency. And yeah, so there's lots of stories where people are doing lots of different things. They're not just teaching. They're doing lots of things. I have a friend who, she was in China, but she went back because of COVID. Is in Trinidad, and excuse me. And for the past 2 years, she's been making her money on OnlyFans. So yeah, believe it or not,
Girl,
like
there are,
OnlyFans
no. The
pays good.
takeaway here is, one, you can go abroad.
Yeah,
Two, there are a plethora of options on how to
yeah,
finance your life abroad. And the
yeah,
name of your podcast is Are We Home Yet?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I'm gonna guess they can hear it pretty much everywhere podcasts are played.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and if you just go to, if like this is your first day ever hearing of something called a podcast, you can go to my website, arewehomeyetpodcast.com. Again, that's arewehomeyetpodcast.com. And I put like 12 podcast players because that was all the room that really I had for it. 12 podcast players on the main page for you just to be like, okay, you know what? I'll click on Ghana or Deezer or Spotify or Amazon or iHeart or whatever your heart contents at the moment, and listen to all the episodes. Or you can go to the guest page, and if you just see someone and you're like, hey, that man looks cute or that woman looks interesting, I want to know about their story, you can just click on the actual, like the interview itself. In the blogs, I've also embedded the, the link to the podcast episode. But yeah, so I mean, I'm hoping that, like, it will be helpful, because in the blogs I do something where it's like, I just don't like talk about the episode, but I also give information about the cost of living. So, like, in the Guatemala episode, I talk about, like, this is the cost of living for in Guatemala, and this is how your American and Canadian money, because he's Canadian, so that's why I did it like that as well, will fare. I interviewed someone who's in Mexico, and I also put in there, like, for your money in Mexico, this is how it will fare. Like this is what will happen. This is the exchange. So I wanted to put like helpful information, in these blog posts as well. Yeah, I mean, some of them, like the cooking one, is all about food. So, that's
Yeah.
not all that helpful, but yeah.
So, how long do you think you will be in Colombia?
Okay, so I mean, I would say a few years, but honestly, it really depends on, like, I would say honestly a year. I could say honestly a year. I don't really think that I will be here a few years, even though sometimes I do think I could, but I don't think so. Just because it's like, I mean, my main purpose is to adopt a child. And other than that, I don't like have like a real reason to stay here, Like, I mean, I don't have a real reason to
Yeah.
stay
Like
anywhere.
no,
Yeah.
that's well, there's that you're coming off of basically being locked up for 2 years.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. So I'm
And
like, freedom. Yes. Yeah.
exactly. So
Yes.
why stay in one place if you don't have to? But
Yeah.
also, you're there primarily because of the ability to adopt there.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
if that's the main draw and the main interest, what
Yeah.
interest,
Yeah.
once that's done, well, then you get to show your baby the whole world.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like, again, like I stayed in China for all those years because like it was a necessary evil. But it's like, now at this point, it's like, there's so many places I want to see and learn and do. And yeah, I absolutely will go back to working online to make my money and then be able to say, okay, great. Do I want to be in Chile? Do I want to be in, do I want to be in Tanzania? Do I want to be in Mauritius? In the beautiful Zanzibar beach? you know, like, where do I want to be in the world? Do I want to go to like Austria? Like, where do I want to go? I want to go everywhere and anywhere. Yeah, I do.
I think that's a great place for us to
Yeah.
end this conversation.
Yeah.
Would love to have you back after
Yay.
you've been in Colombia a little bit, and we can talk. Several
Yeah.
ladies in the chat want to know about what dating is like for you there.
Oh,
Um,
I'm
and
already scared based on what you told me.
hey, just we there are many ways that you and I are very different. I've already explained part of that, but where you are like, I would like to have a man. I tried to read this book called How to Date Men When You Hate Men. And I
Oh, that sounds good.
literally could not get past maybe page 3 because
Yeah.
it occurred to me, I don't really want to date them.
Yeah.
Now, can they warm my bed periodically and bring me tacos from time to time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like a relation, no.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't let me dissuade you from dating, because that is not
Oh,
my
you know
area.
what's funny is that, you know what, I already looked up because, like, okay, so like I'm gonna be interviewing, I'm gonna be doing a couple interviews actually for my podcast on Friday. And I did look up, one of the people is in Mexico. And I did look up what's it called? Oh, and then there's a woman who's coming from Mexico, like Oaxaca. And so like because I've interviewed several people in Mexico, so I looked up like wealthiest men in Mexico. And I think like, well, look, I mean, I won't pretend. I was married to a poor man, and I won't
No, you
pretend that
only
that
need
was
to
good.
do that
Okay.
once. I've been there,
Yeah,
done that.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
got the
Yeah.
emotional scars from it. No thanks.
Yeah. So anyway, so I was like, let's see. If I don't like it here, like, I guess I could go there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, eventually you will be back and we will catch up
Yay.
on all of your adventures. Wishing you well, enjoy
Thanks.
your
Thanks.
pole dancing boot camp, enjoy your
Yeah.
paddle boarding and all of that. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we were
Okay.
able to
Yeah,
make
me too. Me
it work.
too. Yeah, thank
Uh,
you.
and if you are still watching, because we're like almost 2 hours in and you have not subscribed, do that. If you want to give the
Do
video
it.
a thumbs up, go for it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, oh yeah, I will in the description, I will put a link to the podcast and the the title of the book is How to Date. Oh, hold on, let me make sure I'm telling y'all how to date men when you hate men. It's by
Woo.
Blythe Robertson. And like I said, I could not make it. I
Yeah.
couldn't make it because that's the reality of my situation, but that's fine. It's cool. It's all good. All right.
Yeah.
Night, y'all. Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
so
Good
much for
night.
hanging
Bye.
out with us.